The wind cut through the market like frozen knives. David pulled his collar tighter and watched his breath form. Clouds in the air, around him aliens of dozens of species moved between the stalls, haggling over prices and examining goods. Most of them seemed unbothered by the cold. The insected had thick kitten that kept them warm. Furry mammals from northern worlds barely noticed temperatures that would kill an unprotected human. Sophie tugged at his sleeve. Dad, can we get some of those sweet cakes? David looked down at his 8-year-old daughter. Her cheeks were pink from the cold despite her heavy coat. Maybe on the way back. Sweetie, let me finish my business. First, he needed to pick up some spare parts for the heating unit in his shop. Winter on Glacier 7 lasted 8 months, and a broken heater meant death. David had learned that lesson the hard way when he first arrived here 5 years ago. Back then he'd been running from grief, trying to escape the memories of his wife's death. The colonial trade station had seemed like a good place to start over, far from Earth in all its painful reminders. The parts dealer, a four-armed creature named Grell, wrapped up David's order. That'll be 60 credits. David paid and tucked the package under his arm. Sophie had wandered a few steps away, looking at a stall selling colorful stones. He was about to call her back when he noticed where she was, staring at a young girl sat on the ground beside a small blanket covered with handmade items, but she wasn't human. Scales covered her skin in shades of deep purple and blue. Small horns curved back from her forehead. Wing membranes thin as paper were folded tight against her back. A dragon. David realized he'd seen a few of them around the station lately. What caught his attention was how badly she was shivering. The dragon girl's whole body trembled. Her scales, designed for desert heat, offered no protection against the freezing wind. Her lips had turned a darker shade of blue. She hugged herself, trying to stay warm, but it clearly wasn't working. Every few seconds a violent shudder ran through her small frame. Sophie walked over to her. Are you okay? The dragon girl looked up, surprised that someone had spoken to her. I'm fine, she said, but her voice shook worse than her body. You don't look fine. You look really cold. David approached them. Other shoppers walked past without a second glance. A wealthy merchant in expensive thermal gear actually stepped over the girl's blanket without even looking at her. David felt something hot and angry burn in his chest. How long have you been out here? He asked gently. Girl's eyes, golden and slip-pupiled, met his. Fear flickered in them. Just a few hours, sir. I'm not causing trouble. I have permission to sell here. I didn't say you were causing trouble. David knelt down to her level, ignoring the cold ground soaking through his pants. I asked how long you've been out in this cold. She hesitated. Since morning. David looked at the sky. The sun was already setting, which happened early this time of year. That's almost 8 hours. I need to sell my mother's crafts. We need the money. He looked at the items on her blanket. Small carved figures, woven bracelets, painted stones. The work was beautiful but simple. In a market full of high-tech goods and expensive imports, these humble crafts weren't drawing much attention. Sophie picked up one of the carved figures, a tiny bird with spread wings. This is pretty, thank you, the dragon girl said. My mother makes them. She's very talented. What's your name? Sophie asked. Lyra. I am Sophie. This is my dad, David. Lyra tried to smile, but Another violent shiver cut it short. David noticed her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them still. This wasn't just uncomfortable cold. This was dangerous. "Lyra, where are your parents?" David asked. "My mother works at the processing plant. She won't finish until late tonight. And your father?" Lyra's face fell. "He died in the war. That's why we came here." The pieces fell into place. Refugees. David had heard about the conflict on one of the Dragon home worlds. Thousands had fled, arriving at stations like this with nothing but the scales on their backs. And dragon scales evolved for baking. Desert heat were worse than useless in a frozen wasteland. "Have you eaten today?" David asked. Lyra shook her head. Sophie looked up at her father with those eyes that always melted his heart, the same eyes her mother had. "Dad, we have to help her." David thought about the small apartment above his shop. He thought about his own struggles when he'd first arrived, alone with a toddler trying to build a life from nothing. He thought about his wife and what she would have done if she'd seen a child freezing in a market. There was really only one choice. "Lyra, how would you like to come home with us? Get warm, have some hot food?" The girl's eyes went wide. I can't. I need to sell these things. My mother is counting on me." "How much have you sold today?" Lyra looked at her. "Blanket, nothing yet." "Then you're not losing any business by taking a break." "Come on, you look like you're about to freeze solid, but I don't know you. Mother says not to go with strangers." "Your mother is absolutely right," David said. "That's smart advice, but look at me, Lyra. Really, look, do I seem dangerous?" She studied his face. David waited patiently. He knew he looked tired and weathered, but he hoped she could see past that to the genuine concern he felt. "You have kind eyes," Lyra said quietly, "like my father did." "Tell you what, we'll bring your mother's crafts with us so nothing gets stolen. When you're warm and fed, I'll walk you back to meet your mother at the processing plant. She can see for herself that you're safe. Does that sound fair?" Lyra looked between David and Sophie. The little human girl was already gathering up the items from the blanket, carefully wrapping them. Finally, Lyra nodded. David helped her stand. She swayed on her feet, weak from hours in the freezing cold. Without thinking, he put his arm around her shoulders to steady her. Through his glove, he could feel how cold she was, like touching ice. They made their way through the market, Sophie chattering happily about their home and her toys. David walked slowly, matching Lyra's unsteady pace. He felt the stares from other shoppers, a human helping an alien refugee child. It wasn't common behavior on the station where most people kept to their own kind and their own problems. But David had learned something important in the years since his wife died. Grief could make you hard and closed off, or it can make you softer, more aware of others' pain. He'd chosen the latter path, mostly for Sophie's sake. She deserved to grow up knowing kindness, not bitterness. As they left a market behind, David felt something shift in his chest, a purpose. For the first time in months, he felt like he was doing something that truly mattered. Steam rose from the bowl of soup, carrying the scent of vegetables and chicken. Lyra stared at it like she'd never seen food before. Her hand, still trembling from the cold, hovered over the bowl, soaking in the warmth. "It's okay," Sophie said, sitting across from her at the small kitchen table. "You can eat it. Dad makes really good soup." David watched from the counter where he was preparing more food. The apartment wasn't much, just 3 rooms above his shop, but it was warm and safe. Lyra had barely made it up the stairs before her legs gave out. He'd caught her before she fell and helped her to the couch. Only after wrapping her in blankets and getting some heat into her did he feel comfortable offering food. Now watching her take that first careful sip of soup, he saw her eyes close in relief. A small sound escaped her throat, almost like a sob. When did you last eat something hot? David asked gently. 3 weeks ago, before we left the refugee shelter. At the last station, Lyra took another sip, then another. They gave us cold rations for the journey here. We couldn't afford anything else. Sophie's face scrunched up in confusion. 3 weeks. But that's forever. We've been trying to save money, Lyra explained. Mother works all the time, but they don't pay refugees very much. She says if we're careful, we can afford a real place to live soon, not just the temporary housing. David set a plate of bread and cheese on the table. What about winter clothes? This cold isn't safe for your people. Lyra's shoulders sagged. The thermal suits cost 2 months of mother's pay. We can't afford them, she said. We'd manage. That dragon scales are tougher than they look. She touched her arm, where the scales were still pale from a cold, but I think she was wrong. Where are you from originally? David asked, sitting down with his own bowl. Sarah. Prime. It's a desert world. 3 suns. The nights are cool, but nothing like this. Lyra's eyes grew distant. I used to complain about the heat. I'd give anything to feel that heat again. What happened there? The collective came. They wanted our mining rights. Father said no. He was on the planetary council. Her voice got quieter. They bombed the council building. Mother grabbed me and we ran. We've been running ever since. Sophie reached across the table and touched Lyra's hand. The gesture was so natural, so full of childish compassion that David felt his throat tighten. His daughter had inherited her mother's best qualities. You're safe here, Sophie said. Right, Dad, right, David agreed. Finish your soup, Lyra, then we need to get you properly warmed up. After the meal, David led Lyra to Sophie's room. His daughter bounced ahead excitedly, already pulling open her closet. David had been avoiding this closet for weeks, knowing what he'd find inside. Clothes. Sophie had outgrown clothes his wife had bought before she died, planning for a future she'd never see. Here, Sophie pulled out a pink winter coat. I got this last year, but I grew too much. Mom always bought stuff too big so it would last longer. The coat was puffy and warm, designed for Earth-style winters. David took it and examined the back. Wing holes would be a problem. Dragon wings weren't like anything human clothing was designed for. Try it on, he said, handing it to Lyra. The dragon girl slipped her arms into the sleeves. The coat fit reasonably well on the body, though the sleeves were a bit long, but her wings, even folded, created awkward bumps under the fabric. It doesn't work, Lyra said sadly. Thank you for trying, but wait here, David interrupted. He went to a shop below and returned with his sewing kit and some extra thermal fabric. I can fix this. For the next 2 hours, David worked on the coat. He carefully cut slits in the back, then reinforced the edges so they wouldn't tear. He added flaps that could cover the slits when Lyra's wings were folded, keeping the warmth in. Sophie helped by handing him supplies and keeping Lyra entertained with stories about school. Lyra watched his hands work with a mixture of confusion and wonder. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me, David threaded another stitch before answering. Do you know what my wife used to say? She said that being human meant having more heart than sense. Sometimes she'd see someone struggling and she just had to help, even if it was inconvenient or expensive or complicated. He smiled at the memory. She'd have liked you, Lyra. She always had a soft spot for kids who needed help. Where is she now? She died 2 years ago. Sickness. By the time they caught it was too late. I'm sorry, Lyra said softly. I know what it's like to lose someone. Yeah, David said. I imagine you do. Sophie had fallen asleep on her bed, curled up like a cat. David glanced at the chrono on the wall. Late. Lyra's mother would be finishing her shift soon. There, he said, holding up the modified coat. Try this now. Lyra slipped it on again. This time her wings fit through the slits comfortably. The flaps kept the warmth trapped inside, while allowing her wings freedom of movement. She spread her wings experimentally, then folded them again. The coat moved with her. It's perfect, she breathed. I've never had anything so nice. That's not all, David said. He handed her a pair of thermal gloves, a thick scarf, and insulated boots that had belonged to Sophie. These two growing kids on a colony station means lots of hand-me-downs. Might as well put them to good use. Lyra's golden eyes filled with tears. I can't accept all this. It's too much. We can't pay you back. I'm not asking you to pay me back. I'm giving them to you because you need them and I have them. David crouched down to her level. Sometimes people help each other just because it's the right thing to do. No debt, no obligation, just kindness. Humans are strange, Lyra said, but she was smiling through her tears. Yeah, we get that a lot. A knock on the door made them both jump. David opened it to find a dragon woman standing in the hallway. She was tall, her scales a deeper purple than Lyra's, and her eyes were wild with worry. Where's my daughter? She demanded. The factory supervisor said a human took her. If you've heard her mother. Lyra rushed forward, still wearing the pink coat. The woman's anger evaporated into confusion, then relief. She pulled Lyra into her arms, her wings wrapping around the girl protectively. Thank the stars. I was so worried when you weren't at the market. I thought. I'm fine, Mother. This is David and Sophie. They helped me. The dragon woman, who introduced herself as Kira, listened as Lyra explained everything. David offered her tea in a chair. She sat down heavily, exhaustion evident in every movement. I work 16 hours a day, Kira said quietly. I leave Lyra at school, then she goes to the market to help. I know it's cold. I know it's dangerous, but what choice do I have? The pay is barely enough for food and shelter. I can't afford a sitter. I can't afford proper winter gear. She looked at David with hollow eyes. You must think I'm a terrible mother. I think your mother doing everything she can, David said firmly. I've been where you are, alone with a kid trying to make ends meet in a place that doesn't care if you live or die. It's not easy. Why did you help her? Kira asked. We're nothing to you. David looked at Sophie, still asleep on her bed, at Lyra, warm for the first time in weeks, at Kira, carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders because she needed help, he said simply, and because I could give it. The news spread faster than David expected. He shouldn't have been surprised. The trade Station was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business by the next morning. 3 different human merchants had stopped by his shop to ask about the dragon girl. Is it true you gave her a whole winter outfit? Asked Rebecca, who ran the bookshop 2 doors down. That's got to be worth at least 100 credits. David shrugged as he organized inventory. Sophie had outgrown the stuff anyway, seemed wasteful too. Just keep it in storage. Still, Rebecca said, it's got me thinking. I've got boxes of my son's old clothes taking up space in my storage room. There must be other refugee kids who could use them. Probably, David agreed. Rebecca left, but she came back that afternoon with 2 other humans. One was Frank, the station doctor. The other was a woman David recognized from the cafeteria, but had never spoken to. We want to organize a clothing drive, Rebecca announced, for the refugee families. Frank here says he's been treating kids for cold-related injuries all winter, frostbite, hypothermia, respiratory infections, all preventable if they had proper gear. Frank nodded grimly. I've been giving treatment on credit, but I can't give away coats. We need a coordinated effort. What do you need from me? David asked. Your shop has the most storage space. We were hoping we could use it as a collection point. David thought about the extra room in the back. It was mostly empty anyway. Sure, bring whatever you collect. I'll help sort it. The drive started small. A few boxes of clothes, some blankets, extra boots. But within 3 days, David's back room was overflowing with donations. Humans who'd ignored the refugee problem for months suddenly couldn't stop talking about it. All because one man gave a coat to one freezing kid. Lyra came by after school. Most days now, she'd sold more of her mother's crafts in the past week than in the previous month combined. David suspected people were buying them out of pity, but he didn't mention it. Money was money, regardless of the motivation. Look, Sophie said, holding up a small carving of a dragon in flight. Your mom made this one look like you. Lyra smiled. She's getting better at the details. Someone at the factory taught her a new technique. The door chimed in. An insectoid alien entered. David recognized Clickar, a merchant who sold imported electronics. They'd done business before, though. Clickar had always been coldly professional. I wish to understand something, Clickar said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into flat monotone. You gave valuable resources to an unrelated juvenile of a different species. This action provided you no profit, no advantage, no genetic benefit. Explain your reasoning. David sat down the inventory pad. She was cold. I had warm clothes. It's not complicated, but the resources required to produce those clothes represent significant value. Among my people, we would only invest such resources in our own hive members. Even then, only if they showed promise of future productivity. Well, I'm not an insectoid, I'm human. We do things differently. Clickar's compound eyes somehow managed to convey confusion. Despite being totally alien, this is inefficient. You could have sold those items. Instead, you gave them away. Now, other humans follow your example, depleting their own resources. The entire human merchant community is becoming less competitive. This serves no logical purpose. Lyra, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. Maybe humans value things besides profit, such as kindness, community, helping people. who need help, clicker made a sound that the translator rendered as skeptical. Chittering, but he didn't argue further. He made his purchase and left, though. David noticed him glancing back through the window several times that evening. As David was closing up, Kira stopped by. She'd started doing that, bringing small gifts. Tonight it was a bottle of something purple and fizzy. It's a traditional dragon drink, she explained. I had a special order it from 3 systems away, but I wanted to thank you properly. You already thanked me, David said several times. Not enough, never enough for what you've done. Kira sat down on the bench near the counter. She looked less exhausted than before. David noticed, still tired, but no longer carrying that edge of desperation. Lyra told me about the clothing drive, how you're helping organize it. It's not just me, the whole human community got involved because you started it, because you showed them it mattered. Kira looked at him with those golden eyes that were so like her daughter's. Do you know what it's like watching your child suffer and being powerless to stop it? Every morning I sent Lyra to school. I was terrified she wouldn't come home. I'd find her frozen in some alley, but I had no choice. I had to work. We needed the money. You're a good mother, David said firmly. You did what you had to do. No, a good mother would have found a way to keep her child safe and warm. I failed at that. Kira's voice cracked. You succeeded where I failed. You, stranger, did what I couldn't. Hey. David moved to sit beside her. You survived a war. You escaped your home world. You got yourself and your kid to safety. You're working 16-hour days in a factory to build a new life. That's not failure, that's strength. Then why do I feel so weak? Because you're tired. Because it's hard. Because sometimes doing everything right still leaves you feeling like it's not enough. David knew that feeling intimately, but you're not alone anymore. Let people help you. That's not weakness either. Kira wiped her eyes. Humans are very strange creatures, so I've been told. They shared the purple fizzy drink. It tasted like citrus mixed with something David couldn't identify. Not bad though. Different. I got promoted today, Kira said after a while. Supervisor noticed I've been helping optimize the thermal systems. Turns out dragon heat management knowledge is valuable in a frozen wasteland. The new position pays 40% more. That's fantastic. It means I can afford proper housing and winter gear for both of us. Real gear, not hand-me-downs. She paused. Lyra wants to know if she can keep the pink coat. Anyway, she says it's special because Sophie gave it to her. David smiled. Of course she can keep it. It was a gift. Not alone. I want to pay you back for everything. Kira, please let me do this. I need to feel like I'm providing for my daughter again. There was such fierce pride in her voice that David understood this wasn't about money. It was about dignity. Okay, he said. How about this? Pay it forward instead. When you see someone else struggling, help them. That's payment enough. Kira, consider this. That's very human of you. I'll take that as a compliment. Later that night, after Kira left, David stood at his window, looking out over the frozen station. Lights twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere down there, refugee families were sleeping warmer tonight because humans had decided to care. It wasn't much. It wouldn't solve the bigger problems of war and displacement and poverty, but it was something. Sophie padded into the room in her pajamas. Dad, is Lyra okay? She's better than. Okay, sweetie, her mom got a promotion. They're going to be fine. Good, Sophie. Hugged his waist. I like having Lyra as a friend. She's nice. Yeah, she is, Mom. Would have liked her too, right, David? Picked up his daughter and held her close. Yeah, baby, Mom would have loved her. Through the window he watched a dragon-shaped shadow pass under a street. Light wings spread wide against the cold. Lyra, he realized, testing her wings in her new coat, flying for the first time in weeks, warm and safe. Sometimes David thought the smallest acts of kindness created the biggest changes, not in the world maybe, but in individual lives. And wasn't that just as important? The change happened gradually, then all at once. David noticed at first in a market where refugee children had once huddled in corners, ignored by passing shoppers. Now humans stopped to talk with them, to buy their wares, to ask if they needed anything. That a group of human engineers started offering free repairs on heating units for refugee housing. The human-run cafeteria began a program where refugee kids could get one free meal a day. Small things, individual choices, but they added up. It's remarkable, Frank said, reviewing his medical charts over coffee in David's shop. Cold-related injuries among refugee children are down 70% this month, and it's only been 2 weeks since you helped Lyra. I didn't do anything special, David protested. You did the first thing. That's always the hardest. Frank sipped his coffee. People need permission to be kind sometimes. You gave him that permission. Rebecca's clothing drive had expanded beyond anything David expected. She'd organized volunteer teams to sort donations by size and species requirements. Turned out different aliens needed different accommodations. The furry mammals needed breathable fabrics. The insectoids needed loose fits that didn't restrict their joints. The reptilians, like Lyra, needed materials that didn't conduct heat away from their scales. It's become a whole logistics operation, Rebecca said, showing David her organizational charts. About 15 volunteers now. We're coordinating with similar efforts on 3 other stations. The ripple effect surprised everyone. An elderly human woman named Betty started teaching cooking classes to refugee mothers, sharing techniques for making cheap ingredients taste good. A human mechanic began training young refugees in basic repair skills, giving them marketable abilities. The aliens noticed David was restocking shelves when a tall crystalline being entered his shop. The creature's name was Or, and he was some kind of philosopher or teacher among his people. His species communicated through light patterns that his translator rendered into slightly poetic speech. I have observed your kind for many cycles, Orange said, his crystalline body refracting the shop's lights into rainbows. You're physically weak. Your home world is deadly, yet you possess no natural defenses. You require extensive resources just to survive in most environments. By all logical measures, humanity should have died out long ago. Thanks to think, David said, yet here you thrive. On stations throughout the galaxy, humans established themselves successfully. I have pondered this paradox, or lights flickered in a pattern the translator called contemplative. I believe I now understand. Your strength lies not in your bodies, but in your connections. You form bonds across genetic lines. You extend familiar behavior to unrelated individuals, even to different species entirely. We just try to help people who Need help precisely, this trait which seems inefficient to most species, actually provides tremendous adaptive advantage. You create networks of mutual support that transcend biology. Most species only trust their own kind. You trust based on behavior rather than appearance. David had never thought about it that way. I guess we learned early that working together was better than working alone. Earth is a harsh place, still is in a lot of ways. Your planet's hostility forced you to develop social cohesion as a survival mechanism. Fascinating. Horn's lights pulsed. I am writing a treatise on humanity's place in galactic civilization. May I interview you? Me, I'm just a shopkeeper. You are an exemplar of human behavior. Your actions have created measurable change in station dynamics. That makes you significant. David agreed, mostly because saying no to a glowing alien philosopher felt rude. Over the next hour, Oren asked questions about why David helped Lyra, how he decided what to do, what he felt during the process. David did his best to answer honestly. I didn't really think about it, he admitted. I saw a kid who was cold and I had the means to help. Everything else just followed from that. But you could have walked past. Most beings would have. Why didn't you? David thought about his wife, about those last days, watching her slip away while he was powerless to save her, about the crushing loneliness that followed, about Sophie's sad eyes at the funeral. Because I know what it's like to feel helpless, he said finally, to need help and not know where to find it. I never want anyone else to feel that way. If I can prevent it. Orange's lights swirled in patterns that seemed pleased. Empathy derived from personal suffering, using your own pain as a bridge to understanding others' pain. Very human indeed. After Orn left, Lyra came by with Sophie. The two girls had become inseparable. They did homework together, played together, invented elaborate games that David couldn't follow but enjoyed watching. Dad, can Lyra stay for dinner? Sophie asked. Does your mom know where you are? David asked Lyra. She said it was okay. She's working late again, but the good kind of late. She's training new people for supervisor positions. Then sure, go wash up. The girls ran off, giggling about something. David started preparing dinner, listening to their chatter from the other room. It struck him how normal this had become, how quickly Lyra had integrated into their small family, how naturally Sophie had accepted her. Kids didn't see species differences the way adults did. They just saw another kid who wanted to play and laugh and be friends. Maybe humans never lost that. David thought maybe they just got better at remembering what mattered. The tea dinner, Lyra told them about her day at school. There's a new girl from the ice world, Frost something. She was sitting alone at lunch because nobody wanted to sit with her. She looks kind of scary, all white and blue with these big teeth. Did you sit with her? David asked. Yes, Sophie came too. Turns out she's really nice, just shy, and she doesn't understand standard very well yet, so people think she's being rude when she's really just confused. We're going to help her practice, Sophie added, and I'm going to teach her some games. David felt a surge of pride. Sophie was learning the lessons he tried to teach her, not through lectures or rules but through example. By watching him help Lyra, she'd learned that kindness mattered more than differences. That's really good of you girls, he said. Well, someone helped me when I needed it, Lyra said simply. Now I Should help others, that's what you said, right? Pay it forward, that's exactly what I said. Later, after Kira picked up Lyra, David sat with Sophie. While she got ready for bed, she chatted about her day, about Lyra, about the new girl at school. Her enthusiasm was infectious. Dad, Sophie said as he tucked her in. Yes, sweetie, do you think Mom is proud of us for helping Lyra? David's throat tightened. I think Mom is very proud of you. You got her big heart, and yours too, Sophie said. You both taught me that being kind is more important than being rich or strong or smart. What did you get so wise? I've always been wise, you just don't notice. Because I'm short. David laughed and kissed her forehead. Good night, wise one. Good night, Dad. He turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his daughter settle into sleep. Through the window he could see the lights of the station spreading out into the frozen darkness. Somewhere out there, families were warmer tonight. Refugees felt a little less alone. Kids were making friends across species lines, all because one man had seen one cold child and decided to care. It wasn't everything. It wouldn't fix the galaxy's problems, but it was something. And sometimes something was enough. The storm warning came during breakfast. David was pouring cereal for Sophie when the station-wide alert sounded. All residents were advised to secure their homes and stock up on supplies. Massive blizzard was heading straight for Glacia 7, the worst in a decade. How bad? Sophie asked, looking worried. David checked the emergency broadcast on his tablet. The meteorological data made his stomach drop. Wind speeds over 200 km per hour. Temperatures falling to -70. Duration estimated at 3 days. Minimum. Pretty bad, he admitted to be. Why midday the market was chaos. Everyone was panic buying supplies. Heaters, food, water purification, tablets, emergency power cells. David secured what he needed for himself and Sophie, then headed to his shop to make sure everything was properly sealed. He found Kira standing outside, her face drawn with worry. The refugee shelters aren't rated for this kind of storm, she said without preamble. They're temporary structures. The heating systems will fail. Station authority says they're opening emergency shelters in the central core, but they're already at capacity. They're turning people away. David thought about all those families, the ones who just started to get on their feet, the children who'd finally gotten warm clothes. None of it would matter if the shelters collapsed in the storm. How many people are we talking about? Maybe 200, mostly families with young kids. David looked at a shop. Main floor was decent sized. The storage room in back was huge, and his apartment above had space too if they got creative. Tell them to come here, he said. Kira stared at him. What, my shop? It's structurally sound, built into the station core, and I've got industrial heaters for the storage areas. It's not luxurious, but it's safe. David, that's too much. You can't. I can, and I am. Start spreading the word. Anyone who needs shelter can come here. The first families arrived within the hour. David directed them to the storage room, which he'd cleared of inventory. Rebecca showed up with blankets and pillows from the donation drive. Frank brought medical supplies in case anyone got sick. More humans arrived offering help. Betty came with pots of soup and bread. The engineers brought portable heaters and power regulators. Within 3 hours, David's shop had transformed into an emergency shelter housing nearly 50 people. The blizzard hit at sunset. The wind howled like a living thing. Snow didn't fall so much as fly horizontally, slamming against the windows with enough force to rattle the frames. Temperature dropped so fast that frost formed on the inside of the glass, but inside people were warm. Families huddled together in the storage room. Kids played quietly in corners. Parents spoke in low voices, sharing stories and worries. David moved through the crowd, checking on everyone, making sure the heaters were distributed evenly. Lyra found him near the door to his apartment. Mr. David, the heating unit in the far corner is making a weird noise. He followed her back. Sure enough, one of the portable heaters was rattling and smoking slightly. David shut it down immediately. That left a cold spot in the room, and he didn't have a spare heater I can help with that, Kira said, appearing beside him. I've been studying thermal systems at the factory. Let me look at it. While Kira worked on the heater, David noticed something happening in a room. The humans and aliens weren't staying separated anymore. A human mother was helping an insectoid parent calm their agitated larvae. An elderly alien was teaching Sophie and Lyra a game from his home world. Betty was showing a group of refugee mothers her soup recipe, translating through hand gestures and laughter when words failed. By the second day of the storm, the barriers between species had dissolved entirely. Everyone was just people trying to survive together. The humans share their food, the aliens shared their knowledge. A reptilian engineer helped fix a leaky pipe. An insectoid doctor treated a human child's fever with techniques from his home world. Frank pulled David aside during a quiet moment. You seeing this? Hard to miss it. This is what it's supposed to be like. All of us working together. Why doesn't it happen more often? Because people are scared, David said. Scared of the different, scared of the unknown. Fear makes us pull apart. Crisis pushes us together. Shouldn't have to wait for a crisis, though. No. David agreed it shouldn't. On the third day, the storm began to ease. The wind dropped from scream to a roar to a steady howl. Visibility improved from 0 to a few meters. People started talking about going home once it was safe, but something had changed. David saw it in the way a human couple helped an alien family pack their belongings, in how the kids exchange contact information, making plans to meet up after the storm. In the way Oren, the philosopher, was deep in conversation with Betty about the intersection of human cooking and crystalline metabolism. They're going to remember this, Kira said, standing beside David and watching the scene. Not just the storm, but this working together, being human and alien, and all of it just being people. That's the hope, David said. The station administrator, a tall centurion named Ridge, showed up that afternoon. He picked his way through the shelter, his expression unreadable. Finally he approached David. You're the one who organized this. I offer my space. Everyone else organized themselves. Ridge gesture at the crowd. Humans and aliens sharing resources, cooperating without oversight or regulation. This is unusual behavior, is it? Seems pretty normal to me. For humans perhaps, but most species do not extend such cooperation beyond their own kind. I have been administrator of this station for 8 years. I have seen many emergencies. Each time species segregate, each group protects their own, but this Ridge shook His head, this is different, different. How efficient, effective, fewer. Injuries, less property damage, better. Resource distribution than in previous. Emergencies, all because humans. Initiated cross-species cooperation, we. Just did what needed doing, Ridge. Studied David with alien eyes that. Nonetheless conveyed respect, you have. Taught me something important about. Humanity, your species may lack natural advantages, but you possess social cohesion that transcends biology. This is a powerful tool. It's not a tool. It's just who we are, perhaps. Regardless, I am implementing new protocols based on what I have observed. Here, future emergency procedures will encourage mixed species sheltering. Community cooperation will be incentivized. We will learn from human methods. After Ridge left, Lyra tugged on David's sleeve. What did he mean? About humans lacking natural advantages. It means we're not the strongest or the fastest or the toughest. We don't have armor or claws or poison or any of the things that make other species powerful. But you have something better, Lyra said. You have each other. You make family out of strangers. That's a superpower. David smiled. When did you get so smart? I'll learn from the best, Lyra said, hugging him. The storm ended. On the fourth day, the winds died completely, leaving behind a landscape of sculpted snow and ice. The sun, weak but present, glinted off the frozen drifts. People began leaving the shelter, heading back to their homes to assess damage and begin repairs. But they didn't leave alone. Human and alien families left together, checking on each other's homes, sharing tools and supplies. The separation that had defined the station before the storm seemed silly now. They'd survived together. Why go back to being apart? Sophie and Lyra stood at the window, watching people depart. Dad, Sophie said, can Lyra and her mom come for dinner tonight? A real dinner, not emergency soup. I think that's a great idea, David said. We're going to make hot chocolate, Lyra added. And I'm going to teach Sophie a dragon lullaby my father used to sing. David watched them run off together, already planning their evening. Through the window he saw humans and aliens working side by side to clear snow from the pathways. Saw kids of different species playing in the drifts. Saw a community that had finally learned to see past surfaces to the people underneath. The storm had passed, but its lessons remained. 3 months after the storm, David stood in the market, watching something he never expected to see. Humans and aliens shopping side by side, chatting like old friends. Insectoid merchant offering human customer advice on which thermal blanket would work best for her elderly mother. An alien child running up to human shopkeeper asking about toys. The station had changed, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, like ice melting in spring. Remarkable, isn't it? Or appeared beside him, crystalline body casting rainbow patterns across the snow. The behavioral shift has been measurable. Cross-species cooperation is up 40%. Hate-based incidents are down 60%. Economic integration has increased substantially. People just needed a reason to trust each other, David said. No, they needed an example. You provided that example. Orange's lights pulsed. Thoughtfully, I have completed my treatise on human social behavior. Would you like to hear the conclusion? Sure. Humans are not physically exceptional. You are average in most measurable ways. But you possess a trait that is exceedingly rare in sapient species. You are instinctively cooperative across genetic boundaries. Most beings trust their family, their clan, their species. Humans trust based on behavior rather than biology. This makes you extraordinarily effective at building communities. We just help people who need help precisely, and in doing so, you transform strangers into allies, allies into friends, friends into family. This is your true strength. Orange's lights dimmed slightly. My people have existed for 50,000 years. We have achieved great things, but we remain isolated, unable to form bonds with other species. Watching humans has shown me what we have lost in our crystal imperfection, connection, warmth, community. David didn't know what to say to that, or departed, leaving him to his thoughts. Business had been good lately. The clothing drive had led to a general store expansion. David now carried items specifically designed for different species' needs. Heated perches for avian aliens, humidity regulators for amphibian customers, scratch-resistant materials for insectoid children. But the best part wasn't the profit, it was the people. The way customers lingered to chat, the way kids of different species played together outside his shop, the way the market felt less like a collection of isolated vendors and more like an actual community. Mr. David, Lyra burst into the shop, wings spread wide with excitement. You have to come to the plaza right now. What's going on? It's a surprise. Sophie is already there. Mom sent me to get you. David let himself be dragged through the market. The plaza was the central gathering space of the station, usually empty except during official announcements. Today it was packed with people, humans, aliens, families of every species. The station housed. Kira stood at the center with Rebecca, Frank, and several others. When she saw David, she smiled and waved him forward. What is this? David asked. This is a thank you, Kira said. She raised her voice to address the crowd. 3 months ago, my daughter was freezing in the market. She had no coat, no hope, no help. Then a human stranger changed everything. David Park didn't just give Lyra a coat, he gave her kindness, dignity. He showed all of us what it means to care for people beyond your own species. The crowd murmured agreement. David felt his face heating with embarrassment. But David's actions did more than help one child. They started something, a movement, a change in how we see each other. Kira gestured around the plaza. Look at us. 3 months ago we were separated by species, by fear, by mistrust. Now we are a community. We help each other. We protect each other. We are becoming family. Ridge, the station administrator, stepped forward. I have an announcement. The station council has voted unanimously to designate this plaza as community square, and we are commissioning a memorial to commemorate the actions that brought us together. He unveiled a sculpture. It depicted a human figure kneeling beside a small dragon child, draping a coat over her shoulders. The detail was exquisite. David could see his own face in the human figure. See the wonder in the dragon child's eyes. This is too much, David protested. I didn't do anything special. That's exactly why it matters, Rebecca said. You didn't do anything exceptional by human standards. You just saw someone who needed help and you helped them. But that simple act changed everything. Sophie ran up and hugged David's waist. I'm proud of you, Dad. Lyra joined the hug from the other side. Me too. The ceremony continued with speeches from Various community members, stories of how the clothing drive had helped them, how the emergency shelter during the storm had saved lives, how the example of human kindness had inspired them to be better to each other. David listened, still uncomfortable with the attention, but understanding its importance. These people needed this. They needed to acknowledge what had changed to mark the moment when the station shifted from a collection of isolated groups to an actual community. Later, after the ceremony ended, David found himself alone with the sculpture. It was strange, seeing himself immortalized in metal and stone. The artist had captured something in his expression, not heroism or nobility, just simple determination to help a child in need. Your wife would be proud, Kura said, joining him. You honor her memory through your actions. I just did what she would have done. Exactly, Casmite. Lyra asked me something yesterday. She wanted to know if you would be her second father, not replacing her real father, but adding to her family. David's throat tightened. What did you tell her? I told her that David already was family. That family isn't about blood or species. It's about who shows up when you need them, who keeps showing up day after day just because they care. She's already like a daughter to me, David admitted. Both of you are family. Then we have a proposal. Kira pulled out a formal document. In dragon culture, we have a ceremony called clanbending. It creates legal family bonds between unrelated individuals. Lyra and I would like to make it official. We want to be your family, really and truly. David looked at the document through blurry eyes. I'd be honored. The ceremony happened the following week. It was a small affair. Just David, Sophie, Kira, and Lyra, with Rebecca and Frank as witnesses, or attended as well, documenting the proceedings for his research. The ritual involved exchanging gifts and speaking vows of loyalty and care. Lyra gave David a carving her mother had made, depicting their two families intertwined. Sophie gave Kira a drawing she'd made of all four of them together. Kira presented David with a dragon family medallion marking him as clan kin. David had commissioned special bracelets for everyone, each inscribed with the words family chooses family. We are bound now, Kira said formally, not by blood but by choice, by love, by commitment to care for each other. Always, always, David agreed. Sophie and Lyra were already planning their next adventure, chattering about a school project they wanted to work on together. David watched them with Kira, two single parents who'd found family in the least expected place. You know what the best part is? Kira said. What? This isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning. Look around the station now. Everywhere you go, you see humans and aliens cooperating, forming friendships, creating bonds. You started a transformation that will outlive all of us. David thought about that, about all the families who'd found warmth during the storm, about the kids growing up, learning that species differences didn't matter, about a community that had learned to see each other as people first and aliens second. Winter still came to Glacia 7 every year. Cold remained brutal and unforgiving. But the people had changed. They'd learned that the best defense against the cold wasn't better heating systems or thicker walls, it was each other. It was community. It was caring enough to give a freezing child your daughter's coat and trusting that kindness would come back around through the window. David saw Lyra and Sophie outside, both wearing matching pink coats. Lyra had insisted Kira make one for Sophie too. Match her own. Now they played in the snow together, wings and arms spread wide, leaving angels in the fresh powder point. Two girls, two species, one friendship that had changed a station. David smiled. His wife had always said that being human meant having more heart than sense. She'd been right, and in this frozen corner of the galaxy, that oversized human heart had created something warm and lasting. The cold would come again, it always did. But now, they'd face it together, human and alien, alike bound by the simple revolutionary idea that kindness mattered more than difference, and that David thought was worth any cost. Rebecca knocked on the window, gesturing toward the community square. More families were gathering there, using the space the way it was intended, as a meeting place, a common ground, a reminder that they were all in this together. David headed out to join them, Sophie and Lyra running ahead, Kira walking beside him, his family, his community, his home. The station's lights glowed against the endless winter night. Inside those lights, people of 100 different worlds had learned something simple yet profound, that a stranger was just a friend you hadn't helped yet. That family was whoever showed up when you needed them, that the best way to honor the warmth you'd been given was to pass it on to someone who was cold, that a poor dragon girl had needed a coat a human father had given her, his daughters, and in that exchange, everything had changed, not because it was exceptional, but because it was human, and sometimes being human was exactly what the galaxy needed.